is as follows. If this debate was rigged, then why would you claim you won? I mean, that's what they're doing. It's absurd. Anybody who says, I saw this Newsmax poll where like 90% of the viewers say that Trump won. I mean, these are some of the most insane, uneducated, absurd people I've ever seen in my life. There is not one reasonable person that is not biased. Even biased people on Fox News last night, like Brit Hume, and we'll play the audio for you, were admitting that Harris took him for lunch. So listen, the bottom line here is she won the debate. She won it handily. She embarrassed him, and it's why he went into the spin room afterwards. When have you seen a former, president or any type of presidential debate or even vice presidential debate where they go into the spin room right after the debate? They usually let their handlers take care of it. Trump went right into the spin room because he knew he got demolished. So this was, and listen, I can play you so many cuts and so many different moments where it embarrasses Donald Trump and Harris just destroys him with facts. But, everybody wants to blame Harris and Joe Biden for all of our woes. We forget, I don't forget, some of us forget the type of economy that Donald Trump left Joe Biden, as Kamala Harris eloquently points this out.
I would like to let Vice President Harris respond on the economy here.
Well, I would love to. Let's talk about what Donald Trump left us. Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War. And what we have done is clean up Donald Trump's mess. What we have done and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But I'm going to tell you all in this debate tonight, you're going to hear from the same old tired playbook, a bunch of lies, grievances, and name-calling. What you're going to hear tonight is a detailed and dangerous plan called Project 2025 that the former president intends on implementing if he were elected again. I believe very strongly that the American people want a president who understands the importance of bringing us together, knowing we have so much more in common than what separates us. And I pledge to you to be a president for all Americans.
President Trump.
Very well said. And it can't be denied. Look at the economy that Donald Trump inherited from Barack Obama. The economy that George W. Bush left Barack Obama. Look at where the economy was and the economic numbers and the unemployment numbers and the NASDAQ. Look at all the numbers when Obama left it for Trump, and then compare that to where we were when Donald Trump left the economy to Joe Biden. 3,000 to 5,000 people a day were dying of COVID. Nobody was working. We were all locked up in our rooms. And the country was in dire straits. That was the economy that Donald Trump left Joe Biden. And yet Donald Trump has the gall in this clip to brag about his handling of COVID. Have a listen to this.
He's ever seen anything like it. We made ventilators for the entire world. We got gowns, we got masks, we did things that nobody thought possible. And people give me credit for rebuilding the military. They give me credit for a lot of things, but not enough credit for the great job we did with the pandemic.
Did a horrible job. Per capita, we lost more people in the United States of America, which is one of the richest countries in the world, than any other country. We lost millions of people. We were losing thousands of people a day when you left office, and you're bragging about getting people gowns in hospitals? Are you effing kidding me? I mean, it's absurd. And then the issue of abortion came up, which I knew would be a huge topic. In most polls, it's the number 2 most important topic on everybody's mind, especially women, because we know that Donald Trump is the reason why Roe versus Wade was overturned. We understand that, and we know that because of the conservative Supreme Court justices that he appointed, and he brags about that. But then as a cover-up, he says, well, we'll just leave it up to the states. And he made a really weird claim, like he made so many weird claims last night, that somehow liberals in states were allowing babies to be executed after they are born. And he was fact-checked in real time by one of the ABC moderators. Listen to this.
Great courage in doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born.
Yeah, that's right. It's not legal. But yet Trump still brings it up anyway. And if he's not talking about immigrants eating your pets, he's talking about how somehow it's legal in some liberal states to execute a baby after the baby is born. That is not true. It is a blatant lie, like so many of the other lies. And Harris did such a great job in not letting that affect her, in some cases pointing out the lies, and she was quick on her feet. And this was her response, a woman's perspective on Trump's abortion claims. Have a listen to this.
Madam Vice President, I want to get your response to President Trump.
Well, as I said, you're going to hear a bunch of lies, and that's not actually a surprising fact. Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he intended. And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime of violation to their body does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral. And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot. She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that. A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term. They don't want that. And I pledge to you, when Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. But understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national abortion, a monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think the American people believe that certain freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about one's own body, should not be made by the government.
In my opinion, that was one of the most powerful statements that Harris made, and she made quite a few of them. That was one of the most powerful statements that she made in arguably the entire debate, was the issue of abortion. And she is 150% right. Do we want this? Is this what we want? We want a woman or a young teenage girl, God forbid, we know it happens, it's horrible, that is the victim of rape or incest, to be forced to have that baby. Is that what America wants? For the government to tell women what to do with their own bodies? Is that? No. Most of this country, Republican and Democrat, believe in the woman's right to choose. And this idea that they're executing babies at the 8th and 9th month is also a lie. It's not true. And this is the question that Donald Trump still to this day refuses to answer. J.D. Vance was asked not that long ago, hey, if there was an abortion ban, would Donald Trump as the president veto the bill? J.D. Vance said he would never allow it. He would never sign an abortion ban throughout the country. Well, it turns out that Donald Trump was throwing J.D. Vance under the bus, and it's a question that he still refuses to answer because he's a coward. Listen to this.
And how unfair that would have been, part of the reason they lost, to the millions and millions of people that had to pay off their student loans. They didn't get it for free. But they were saying it's the same way that they talked about that they talk about abortion.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness, J.D., and I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me, but I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss it because she'd never be able to get it, just like she couldn't get student loans. They couldn't get student loans. They didn't even come close to getting student loans. They taunted young people and a lot of other people that had loans. They can never get this approved. So it doesn't matter what she says about going to Congress. So wonderful. Let's go to Congress, do it. But the fact is that for years, they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government. And we did something that everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Notice how he won't answer the question. He didn't answer multiple questions. He wouldn't answer if he wants Ukraine to win this war. Notice how he wouldn't answer that question either. We'll get to that. But again, he was asked if a bill was brought to his desk as the president of the United States to ban abortion. Would you sign off on that? Yes or no? He won't answer the question because he's a coward. And I'll tell you why he won't answer. Because he knows the evangelical right will probably not support him if he answers the question honestly. There's not an honest bone in his body. That's why he won't answer that question. Just like when he was asked about the Proud Boys years ago on a debate stage, and he told them to stand back and stand by. Do you remember that? He was asked about the Proud Boys. Will you denounce the Proud Boys? The Poverty Law Center, they call them a hate group. Donald Trump said, stand back and stand by. Why did he do that? Because he wants their vote. He wants David Duke's vote. He wants the Klan to vote for him. He wants bigots and racists to vote for him. So that's more important to appease them so that he can, get back in power. He won't answer the question. It is a fair question. It is an important question that Harris will answer on a dime. But Trump won't answer it. Mr. President, Mr. Former President, if this bill reached your desk for an abortion ban, would you veto the bill? He won't answer it. Coward. So don't you come at me with this nonsense. Oh, well, Harris isn't answering questions. I don't know where she stands on this position or that. Oh, no, she's answering every question. You might not like the answer, but Trump isn't even answering. This was the moment in the debate, in my personal opinion, that changed everything. This was the moment in the debate where Donald Trump is proven once again that not only does he take the bait, but he's a petulant little child who can't control his emotions. Kamala Harris played him like a dog, and she brought up crowd size. You can't hurt Donald Trump's ego because then he just loses it. This was the moment, in my personal opinion, 10 or 15 minutes into the debate, where Donald Trump never recovered from it. Have a listen to this.
Tell you something. He's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts you first. And I pledge to you that I will.
Donald Trump never recovered from that. He said nobody shows up at her rallies. I was at her rally. There were over 15,000 people here in Las Vegas. I was there. And she made the claim, which is correct, that people leave his rallies early out of boredom. One of my videos went viral. It's got millions of views on social media. I was at the Trump rally in Las Vegas. Midas Touch retweeted me and Krasenstein and many others. I videoed on my phone, not dozens, not hundreds, thousands of people leaving the Donald Trump rally in the middle of him speaking. And in that video that went viral, I'm asking them, why are you guys leaving? Why are you leaving? I witnessed it with my own eyes. Mr. Former President Cheeto Jesus, I witnessed it. Thousands were leaving your rally. I was at the Harris rally. Maybe a few people left. Not hundreds, not dozens. People stayed to watch Harris speak. So you're a liar. Here's the point in the debate where, again, they start talking about crime. Have a listen to this.
President Trump, thank you. I'll let you respond, Vice President Harris.
Well, And let's be clear where each person stands on the issue of what is important about respect for the rule of law and respect for law enforcement. The former vice president called for defunding federal law enforcement, 45,000 agents, get this, on the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts. So let's talk about what is important in this race. It is important that we move forward, that we turn the page on this same old tired rhetoric and address the needs of the American people, address what we need to do about the housing shortage, which I have a plan for, address what we must do to support our small businesses, address bringing down the price of groceries. But frankly, the American people are exhausted with this same old tired playbook.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
By the way, violent crime went way down under the Biden administration, went up when Trump was president of the United States. If we really want to talk about crime, and I do find it rich to use Kamala Harris's term, that the man who is a 34-count convicted felon and a liable sexual abuser wants to even bring up crime is a joke. And this is another point in the debate that is mesmerizing to me. We all know what happened on January 6th. We know that if Donald Trump didn't lie and say the election was stolen, January 6th never happens. I asked that question to Republicans and they curl themselves into a pretzel trying to answer it. We know it doesn't happen if Donald Trump doesn't lie about the election. We know that Donald Trump incited what took place that day. We know that. People died that day. 140 officers were injured. Officers died. Brian Sitnick died the next day. Officers committed suicide. Their families said they were never the same after that day. I'll listen to their families speak. A woman was trampled on the steps that day, which is never talked about. Officers were beaten with their own batons while Donald Trump for hours sat in the Oval Office and did nothing when he was begged by members of his own administration, which we've learned, asked him to put out a video, and it took him hours to finally say anything. And Donald Trump was asked if he had any regrets on January 6th.
Mr. President, on January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol that day, the officers coming under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on.
Yeah.
Peacefully and patriotically. And nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer that should have never, ever shot her. It's a disgrace. But we didn't do this group of people that have been treated so badly. I ask, what about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed to pour in? She was the border czar. Remember that. She was the border czar. She doesn't want to be called the border czar because she's embarrassed by the border. In fact, she said at the beginning, well, I'm surprised you're not talking about the border yet. That's because she knows what a bad job they've done. What about those people? When are they going to be prosecuted? When are these people from countries all over the world, not just South America? They're coming in from all over the world, David, all over the world, and crime rates are down all over the world because of it.
But let me just
when are those, David, when are those people going to be prosecuted? When are the people that burned down Minneapolis going to be prosecuted? Or in Seattle, they went into Seattle, they took over a big percentage of the city of Seattle. When are those people going to be prosecuted?
He's asked about January 6th. He talks about immigration. He talks about Black Lives Matter protests and takes no responsibility for that day on January 6th. Ashley Babbitt was shot and it was ruled to be justified, and that's why that officer was never indicted, because she was crawling through a window just 10 to 20 feet away from politicians out there when the chants were hang Mike Pence. And then he says nobody on the other side was killed, as if being a Republican or a Democrat excuses that kind of behavior. Let me be clear. It wasn't liberals or Democrats that were storming the Capitol. It wasn't liberals or Democrats that were attacking police officers. It wasn't liberals or Democrats that day that were defecating on Nancy Pelosi's desks and destruction of property. No, those were not Democrats. How do we know? Because every single one of those people had their day in court to defend themselves with representation. And we learned many of them were part of right-wing fringe groups, and they were all Trump supporters. But he wants to talk about the border and refuses to take any responsibility for what took place on that day. Do we remember the statement a few days ago where Donald Trump said, I lost by a whisker? I guess he slipped up. By the way, it wasn't a whisker. He said, I lost by a whisker. And he's asked about that statement, and him backtracking on it is hilarious. Have a listen to this.
To focus truth in these times that we're living in. Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide. In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short.
I said that?
Are you now acknowledging that you lost in 2020?
No, I don't acknowledge that at all. I said that sarcastically. You know that. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically.
Sarcastically? He didn't look sarcastic when he made that statement, so that's another blatant lie. He slipped up. I lost by a whisker. I wouldn't characterize it as a whisker, but he did lose. And then he says he was being sarcastic. Do we remember during COVID when he talked about injecting yourself with disinfectant? And then when he realized, oh boy, I said some things that are pretty stupid, the next day he said, I was just joking. When nobody was joking, laughing in that press conference. It's ridiculous. And this is the moment in the debate where Kamala Harris makes a very, very good point about dictators throughout the world. They're not rooting for Kamala Harris. They're rooting for Donald Trump to win.
It is absolutely well known that these dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president again because they're so clear they can manipulate you with flattery and favors. And that is why so many military leaders who you have worked with have told me you are a disgrace. That is why we understand that we have to have a president who is not consistently weak and wrong on national security, including the importance of upholding and respecting in highest regard our military.
Absolutely, 150%. 150%. Calls them suckers and losers. I don't respect John McCain because he was captured. He holds a photo op at Section 60 at Arlington Cemetery. And it's interesting because the far right, they want to blame Joe Biden and Kamala Harris for the Afghan withdrawal and all of our issues when it involves terrorism. But yet, Kamala Harris points out correctly, which Donald Trump couldn't deny, not only did he negotiate with the Taliban and went right through the Afghan government and went straight to the Taliban, but he released 5,000 Taliban terrorists. Have a listen to this.
Well, I will tell you, I agreed with President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. 4 presidents said they would, and Joe Biden did. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century. But let's understand how we got to where we are. Donald Trump, when he was president, negotiated one of the weakest deals you can imagine. He calls himself a deal maker. Even his national security advisor said it was a weak, terrible deal. And here's how it went down. He bypassed the Afghan government. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban. The negotiation involved the Taliban getting 5,000 Taliban terrorists released. And get this, and the president at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David, a place of storied significance for us as Americans, a place where we honor the importance of American diplomacy, where we invite and receive respected world leaders. And this former president, as president, invited them to Camp David because he does not again appreciate the role and responsibility of the President of the United States to be commander-in-chief with a level of respect. And this gets back to the point of how he has consistently disparaged and demeaned members of our military, fallen soldiers, and the work that we must do to uphold the strength and the respect of the United States of America around the world.
She's absolutely right. Can you imagine if, days or weeks after 9/11, today being the anniversary, if George W. Bush invited members of Al-Qaeda to Camp David? Now, you would probably be thinking what I'm thinking. That's ridiculous. It would be outrageous. It would never happen. Donald Trump invited members of the Taliban to Camp David, which can't be denied because it's true, because he's an imbecile. And then the topic of race comes in, where we know Donald Trump attacked Kamala Harris, saying she must have turned black. Have a listen to this exchange.
I want to move on now to race and politics in this country. Mr. President, you recently said of Vice President Harris, quote, "I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black." I want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight. Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
I don't, and I don't care. I don't care what she is. I don't care. You make a big deal out of something. I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words, so I'm asking.
I don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that. And then I read that she was black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her.
She never said she wasn't black. Again, that's a blatant lie. And when he's asked about his own words, he says, I don't know, like the fool that he is. And then for years, we've heard Republicans, not just Donald Trump, MAGA Republicans in general, complaining about Obamacare. Donald Trump was in office for 4 years. Where was the replacement plan? Remember when he said, in a few weeks, we're going to have it. In a few weeks, we're going to have it. He still doesn't have a plan, but listen to what he claims he does have.
But until then, I'd run it as good as it can be run.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan?
I have concepts of a plan.
What does that even mean? I have concepts of a plan. What a lazy lawmaker. The guy for 9 years could sit down with his advisors and policymakers and come up with something for a couple hours in 9 years, and he still doesn't have a plan. What the hell does that mean? I have concepts of a plan. I don't think he has concepts of how to debate an intelligent woman 10 feet away from. What does that mean? Concepts of a plan. And then there's the Central Park Five. We know that these 5 individuals were wrongfully accused and wrongfully convicted. And what did Donald Trump do back in the day? Yeah, I'm sure it has nothing to do with their race. He took out a page in the New York Times saying that they deserve the death penalty. He never retracted. He never apologized. They have since been exonerated, and he still doubles down on it. Have a listen to this.
President Harris, thank you. Lindsay?
President Trump, this is now your 3rd time.
This is the most divisive presidency in the history of our country. There's never been anything like it. They're destroying our country, and they come up with things like what she just said. Going back many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park Five, they admitted, they said, they pled guilty. And I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately. And if they pled guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty.
Again, he's doubling down on it. The Central Park Five, they've been exonerated, not guilty based on DNA evidence or lack thereof. And yet no apologies from him. I was wrong. I made a mistake. Nothing. Because the man isn't a human being. He has no empathy in his body, could never admit he's wrong about anything, and he's mentally ill and probably deranged and the most insecure man on the planet, arguably. So I can play you a bunch of pundits and people on the right. There are very few that would, have the gall to say that Trump won this debate, because he didn't. He goes into the spin room afterwards. He knows that he lost the debate. But I'm going to give you one soundbite from one staunch Republican, then we're going to take calls. On Fox News, Brit Hume is very biased. He's very pro-Republican. But even Brit Hume admitted that Trump had a really bad night. Have a listen to him.
Now, look, make no mistake about it. Trump had a bad night. He rose to the debate repeatedly when she baited him, something I'm sure his advisors had begged him not to do. In the first debate when Biden attacked him, he just kept his cool and kept going. In this debate, he rose to debating, and we heard so many of the old grievances that we'd long thought that Trump had learned were not winners politically. Mm-hmm. And there they all were, talking about how he didn't lose the election and all that. I mean, my sense is that she came out of this in pretty good shape. Now, how long this will last and is anybody's guess. But for tonight, at least, this was pretty much her night.
You're saying she had a good night?
I'm saying she certainly did.
Yeah, she certainly did. That's Brit Hume, by the way. And many others on Fox News are scrambling and turning into a pretzel. The bottom line is Harris exceeded expectations. She did a wonderful job. And the numbers are showing that. And I think this could be the beginning of the end